Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con, testimonies from reverts and converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. Before we get to this week's guest, I want to remind you to subscribe and to share this channel with others, share these stories, and continue to get the word out as much as you can. This week's guest is Tricia Dugas, and I want to tell you about how I found her. And it's actually quite interesting. I heard about her store. It's providential.co, and they make these, or she makes a number of devotional gifts. And I was stunned. I knew the minute I went to her website that my wife was going to fall in love with the store. So I shared it with her, and I went to the about page and saw that Tricia was a convert. So I reached out and said, hey, love to have you on the show. Tricia, first of all, thank you for what you do with this store and the beauty that is found here, and also for agreeing to be on the program.
Well, thank you for having me. And the pleasure is all mine. I'm just really having fun making things, and I'm just excited that people like them.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And again, I'm going to put that in the description. I think a lot of people that are looking for gifts, and what's so cool about what you do, some of the designs, I've never seen anything like it. And I think it was some of the, you make Christmas cards there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, some
Wide
of that was
variety.
just, I don't know, I just very, very beautiful, simple design. But anyway, enough about that. How did your journey start? Because we were talking just before recording, and this company of yours started only 5-6 years ago, but your conversion happened close to 2 decades ago, right?
Yes. Yeah. Early 2000s. I was in my early 20s. And basically, I grew up nothing. I had some friends who were Christian. I went to a Catholic church with I'm sorry, it wasn't a Catholic church, it was an Episcopalian church. It was high church,
Okay.
Episcopalian. As a little kid, I would spend the night at her house on Saturdays, and then I'd go with her and her family to church on Sunday. And that was pretty much the exposure that I had. And so by the time I got into high school, I was very lost, just very lost. And there were some dark times there. Went into college, considered myself an atheist by that point.
Hmm.
And really, it was more of just, well, if I say, there's no God, I can justify my behavior. So I recognized that at some point. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I was married very young, outside of the church, obviously, but to a Catholic.
Okay.
And we had a child, and that kind of set me on this path of personal transformation and asking bigger questions. And so I was unbaptized. And so I came into the church through an 18-month RCIA process, which was very, very intense, very interesting. And yep, been a Catholic ever since. And it's funny because I still feel all this time later like I'm still like a baby Catholic. Like I'm just such a, like I'm kind of beyond an infant, more like a toddler Catholic. uh, and God is just so good to me, and I'm so grateful that He has met me where I was, that He meets us where we are.
Absolutely. So you have your first child, and do you remember a moment where you felt prompted, I need to look into Christianity, or what was I doing in my high school years? What happened there that was dramatic for you?
Well, it was partially the influence of my then spouse's family, him being a Catholic, being raised Catholic. They were, his mother particularly was very encouraging of me to read the scriptures. And I was a little bit resistant, but the birth of my son really changed everything, because, becoming a mother or a father, I would imagine, just has this way of putting everything into perspective. You're responsible for this new life. And for me, I was so young. I was, 20 years old and fresh out of art school and didn't know what I was doing. And so it was such a gift to me to have some kind of anchor to really I felt God's call, but I was really just foggy headed about the whole thing
Mhm.
at that point. But like I said, he met me there, and he was just so gentle in guiding me through my conversion, which I feel like when I was going through RCIA, it was kind of light on the catechesis and heavy on the emotion.
Oh,
And,
okay.
you know, I think for that program, because it was such a wide variety of people, from different backgrounds, and some of them having had some of the sacraments and some of them unbaptized like I was, it fit, I guess, the room and the diversity of people. But for me personally, it was only the beginning of really an explosion of questions that would happen a few years later. So by that point, I was like thirsting for theology. I wanted to know the ins and outs of everything related to the faith. And that happened by the time I had my second child. So um, that is kind of that's what I consider my intellectual conversion to the faith. I kind of had a light conversion, kind of
Yeah.
an emotional prompting of, calling like God, God gently leading me and dealing with me as I was, kind of ignorant and super young and overwhelmed. And then to this pinnacle moment after I had my second son, where I was going home to pump for him because he was in daycare and I was working full time. And while I would pump, I would watch EWTN. I found it, just randomly, and it really just got me thinking. Like, wow, I've never thought about philosophy. I've never thought about theology, and I was a public school kid and got away somehow through
Yep.
4 years of high school without finishing in a book in its entirety. So it was like a real deep
Yeah.
intellectual awakening. So
I'm laughing because that's so similar to me. Just
really,
yeah, not able to finish much of anything. No interest in what I would call just general academics. It was, I'd get decent grades and everything would work
yeah,
out, but I couldn't remember, like, what was the last book?
yeah,
And I'd come up with some series that I read like in sixth grade or something as something that was my last fond memory of reading, which was really sad, but you realize how much more, yeah, just blows your mind. So then what year was
yeah.
that where you're diving in,
So
trying
that
to get all
was,
these questions answered?
yeah, that was 2003 by
Okay.
that point. And like I said, just really thirsting for just more of the meat of the faith. And I talked to the woman who ran the RCIA program at the church where I came into the church, and she said, "Oh, well, I studied theology at University of St. Thomas. That's what I did, because she also obviously had that thirst and was directing me on that path. And so I thought, well, that's my next logical step. I'll just, I was then working as a graphic designer full time, and I had my little kids, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll go study theology. That sounds awesome. That sounds like way more meaningful than what I'm doing right now, just designing business cards and logos. And that's exactly what I did. I kind of arranged something where I could leave my job, and I took on a lot of student loans, and I studied theology. So it was awesome. It was some of the best years of my life, just going on campus as a, obviously a non-traditional student, but
Yep.
I was just so into every subject, every class I was excited about. Well, maybe not math, but because I did have to, my art degree was an associate, so I had some making up to do there.
Sure.
But the theology courses and the philosophy and my English courses were even tying in. There was just this synthesis of learning that was happening, and I was just on fire about it. I was just so excited to learn more, and I became a theology teacher because of that for a couple of years. But I'm a creative at heart, and a restless soul. So the teaching gig did not last, but I was then kind of, led down this path that I'm currently on, which is the marriage of my creativity with what I know about the faith, but really just deeper than that, like just the real relationship that I've developed with God. And I thought then, like, oh yeah, like this is great. I'm learning about the faith, and I'm solid in my catechesis, but now it's like, who cares? I mean, not who cares, because it was wonderful, but
Yeah.
really it's like my relationship with God is really what I treasure so much. And I'm just grateful that he has been so patient with me. And my journey has been really exciting, very, treacherous at certain points, but very exciting.
Yeah. How was it difficult, if you don't mind me asking? What were some of those periods that were difficult? I know a lot of people will talk about, and the most recent video was a couple talking about how there was this honeymoon phase, and then there was some difficult times. I mean, that can be related to being in the church, like politics within the church, but it can also relate to family as well.
Yeah.
Depending on, again, your upbringing, sometimes it's very difficult for family members to accept such a shift. But I don't know if that's in your case what happened.
Well, definitely my upbringing. I was raised by a single mom, and my mom was an alcoholic. And so that in and of itself was very challenging. Just dealing with her kind of ups and downs, and of course my relationship, which started off on, a pretty bad footing. I wasn't obviously a Catholic at that point.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting divorced. Our marriage just kind of fell apart. And I felt like a giant failure. And I felt like I had failed God. And this was following on the heels of having gone to UST, University of St. Thomas, gotten my theology degree, became a teacher. And I thought I was like doing the right thing and just chugging along. And and so everything just started to unravel at that point. And that was my late 20s. So it was kind of a quick whirlwind thing. And I just didn't know how to deal with it, in terms of like, I felt God's absence. I know in retrospect, he was definitely there. Otherwise, I think I would have lost my mind. But, my mom ended up passing away, and that was very close to my divorce. And so it was just this really, really intense period of loss for me. And it really, it devastated me. But I'm so grateful that I had my faith at that point, because like I said, I can't imagine, excuse me, I can't imagine going through a trial or two really big life changes like that, not having that anchor, not having, my faith to sustain me. And in the midst of all that, I remember I stepped into church one afternoon, and I just heard God say, in the midst of all of this, just put me first and everything will fall into place. And that was kind of the first time I had ever heard God,
Yeah.
just so clearly and so directly. And of course, I probably didn't. I mean, I made lots of mistakes, but I just kind of made it through. I look back on that now and I'm like, it's incredible that that I made it through that, and I didn't have any bitterness or anger. It's miraculous, really. It's really just grace that has brought me from there to where I am today, on good speaking terms with my ex. We have children together, obviously, so navigating that wasn't always easy.
Sure.
Going through the annulment process, very difficult. And wow, just Jesus was like holding my hand every step of the way. And I'm overflowing just I keep saying I'm grateful, but it's true.
Yeah.
I'm just
That's amazing. Were there certain prayers that you were drawn to in that like valley, really?
yeah, I've never been super into like rote prayer. I've always been very spontaneous about my prayer.
Sure.
And I think I felt at a certain point like I needed to be very wordy and like lofty with my prayers. And I realized like I just need to say the simplest thing. I just have to cry out in that moment, even if it's just, Lord help me. Actually, there was a specific thing, and it's because of the priest who baptized me that I turned to this prayer, and he ended up passing away in this period of time as well. It was kind of like boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
But it was the words from scripture: Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And I would turn back to that prayer. Just I still do.
Yeah.
But when you're in the thick of that darkness, it's very powerful, that prayer.
Incredible. So then you came out of that valley, and and you tell me if this doesn't connect, but I think it does. So you find yourself teaching theology, and you said you have all these creative juices flowing and everything, and you decide to make that big pivot. Was that pivot directly into what you're currently doing? Was there something else leading up to that idea, that big idea?
It was not direct. It was a very long path from there. So pretty much through most of my 30s, I was, I started off, I worked at the Houston Zoo for a while as their senior designer. And that was a really fun job. It was really great for my kids because they could, get behind the scenes, and that was awesome. And I had great relationships from that were really life-giving to me. From there, I worked freelance. So I did freelance design for a handful of years after that. And in all of that time, actually for the longest time, I've wanted to have my own business making products. And it just sort of slowly came to fruition that I thought, man, I really need to bring these two things together and make Catholic products that speak to, this younger generation and show them how beautiful their faith is. Things like I started with the prayer candle because I thought, oh, here's this thing. It's kind of kitschy. Like I had friends who were not Catholic that would have them around, and younger Catholics thought of it as more like, oh, my grandma uses those, or just it wasn't as fresh in their minds, like the purpose and the meaning behind it. So I thought I'll take this item and I'll revamp it with better wax, so a soy candle, use better fragrance oils, and represent it with new art, and just kind of help people connect to that devotional practice, because it's a very powerful symbol. And that was kind of the first foray into my own business with Providential Co. that I started with that candle.
And all of these designs, so I just pulled up the site because there's certain design that really speaks to me. So I was undergrad graphic design, wasn't very good at it. That's what I realized after I graduated. But anyway, the Our Lady of Guadalupe candle, for example. So you just designed that. All of this is your art? Correct.
Yes.
It's really cool. Now, what would you call that style of design? What do you want to, I don't know, inspire in people when they see this, or what kind of memories are you trying to elicit, that kind of thing? I'm sure you get to that level when you're thinking about the emotional aspect of all of this.
Yeah, I think that I'm just kind of, this might sound really terrible, but I'm just like having fun. I'm just that's not things that I would like.
Well, I guess it's naturally happening then, because like I told my wife, I said, I just see certain designs. I have no idea why it speaks to me, but that Lady of Guadalupe design is unbelievable. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just really
so glad to hear that.
Yeah. So you're talking about the candles, you branch out to these other things. Has the theology background, how has that kind of weaved into what you do from the creative front?
Not as like intensely as I would have thought, but I mean, I know my faith. I definitely don't read like heavy theology books like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely on a different path of I just want to connect with God, and I want to, really lean into that relationship that he wants. Like realizing that he is pursuing me and how much he loves me is like so mind blowing, but it's also so healing for me as the child of an alcoholic.
Sure.
Like growing up, I loved my mom so much. We had a really close relationship, but there was so much damage from, watching her kind of self-destruct. And so for me, it's like, I just want to focus on that healing, like where God is bringing that into my life. And he definitely does. And I think when I'm creating art, I feel just so alive. It's like plugging into the Holy Spirit and just letting the Spirit direct and, carry me through that process. And sometimes it's really not easy. It's kind of like giving birth in a way. When you create something, you go through this trial of like, I can't even do this. Like, how have I done this in the past? And you kind of recycle this whole process of like, whatever made me think that I was a
Yes.
designer,
Yeah.
and, once you kind of push past that, you get to the brightness at the end. But that doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes like there's one piece or two pieces that come to mind in particular that I just sat down and I just did it. And I didn't really think about it. I just I just lost myself in that process. I just felt excited and energized and inspired. And then it just happened. And then there was something.
That's incredible.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Well, it's funny. The other thing that stands out, and I keep coming back to it, a website such as yours, again, coming from a design background, I notice when there's good design or poor design in general. So when my wife and I were going to a non-denominational church for about 10 years, the designers are phenomenal. The evangelical designers are phenomenal.
Right.
So I go, right? So when I reverted, I just looked around and I said, yeah, it's just like childhood. I remembered seeing some pretty poor design, and that's just the nature of some of these things, some of these mom and pop operations.
Yeah.
But recently you see this incredible, I don't know, I can't even say a resurgence, but maybe in a sense it is.
Yeah.
Just seeing all these sites that are just beautifully done, and they communicate the reality of Catholicism, the beauty, and
Yeah.
it kind of brings to life the senses in a way that only Catholicism can. So I don't know, there's not a
Absolutely.
question in there, but I just thought it was an interesting thing every time. I mean, from the book covers to the CD covers to
Yeah.
the logoed sweatshirts, you say, whoa, who's doing this? And they say, it's just you know, just some kid that graduated a few years ago. I'm like, dang it. They have a good
Yeah,
eye. They have a good eye. Yeah.
it's true. And I think that what I've experienced in the creative community that are Catholics specifically is this realization that we are the stewards of beauty. Like it's our responsibility to reclaim our identity as, you know, as artists. And we had this on lock in the Renaissance.
Yeah. Hey, that's exactly where I was like, okay, kind of a resurgence here, but yeah.
Yeah. And then things, obviously fell by the wayside, and you have a lot of bad art and things that are, just poorly made or cheaply made. And I wanted to take that on specifically, like source things myself, try to source as much, locally or minimum USA as possible.
Yeah.
And just make sure that I'm putting quality out there, because, that's what believers deserve. They deserve that in their
Yeah.
devotional lives.
Yeah. You want definitely want quality for sure. I mean, some of the rosaries, for example. So I got why can't I think, rugged rosary,
Yeah.
and went for it because of that paracord. It's so thick. So I remembered getting these rosaries as a youngster, and they were great, but they would fall apart. And you get to that point where you say, it is worth something that you're going to use on a
Yeah.
regular basis, that quality. So you've seen the rosaries in general popping up everywhere where the quality is exceptional,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm so excited that this is happening, because it really is just like this wave of
Yeah.
young Catholics that are
Yep.
using their skills and their talents to promote the kingdom and doing a really good job.
Yep.
Making me feel really proud, as opposed to like, thanks.
You're, you're like, there are a billion of us. Is that the best we can do here? I mean, this.
Exactly.
What was I going to ask you? Do you have other products that you're working on that are going to be coming out soon, or how do you get that down? Where you have a product line and then you kind of figure out, oh, is there a gap here, or is it just you're motivated to do something else? How does that all come together?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because sometimes there will be, a gap, and then obviously with the candles, there was a gap there, and I seized on that. The candles are my best-selling item, and I won't bore you with all the details, but we basically moved from Houston, Texas to Vermont in September.
Oh, wow.
And I had the candle production. I had some people helping me in Houston. I kind of had it on lock, and I was excited to free up my time to do other things, but it's not really working out the way that I thought it would. Obviously, shipping candles 1,800 miles or however long it is from Houston to Vermont is not ideal. So I'm taking that back in house and kind of getting back to my roots of pouring the candles myself, coming up with obviously the artwork is what I do. And I'm really excited about that. I'm just really trying to surrender it. I am trying. It's very difficult, right? But I'm leaning into what God is asking me to do, which is to just give everything to him. Obviously, he's asking all of us that, right? Just surrender, just trust. And I'm excited to see where he takes it, because I know times are weird and tricky and kind of scary. And especially for a small business owner, it's like, ooh, what is it going to look like 6 months from now?
Yeah.
But that's not for me to worry about.
True.
I'm gonna continue to just be excited and work on, the artwork. And I have a special candle. So the tall candles, the glass during the pandemic, that with the supply chain issues, I couldn't get that glass for almost a year. And I finally got my hands on more of that. So I'm excited to make more of those, and just keep chugging along, just keep creating.
That's very, very helpful. I want to ask you one more question related to the relationship. You were talking about, okay, here you go, pursuing theology. And many of us have spoken to a number of people that, we can get caught up in the knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And I like your plea to not forget the relationship. And that is typically, it's funny, it's a common knock on Catholics. Okay, you don't have the relationship. First of all, I would disagree with that completely, because the same thing happens in any Christian group. You're going to have people that are truly devout and humble, and they want that relationship. And then you're going to have other people that may just get distracted and forget what it means to be in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what advice would you give to those that feel like that God is absent, or they just can't grab his hand? And you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
They can't, they're just having a dark period, and they don't know what to do to kind of return to what they once knew.
Yeah. I would say my best advice would be adoration. I think that particular practice, which was something that I didn't personally embrace until very recently, was just kind of ignorant about it for a really long time. But it's been so transformational for me just to spend time in that space with the Lord and just really kind of open up and say, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know up from down right now. And I need you to guide me. I need you to tell me what to do next. And then on top of adoration, I would say the surrender novena is the number one best novena to pray. It's something that I've decided to just keep perpetual. I just want to keep praying it over and over and over again, because it's brought me so much comfort. I mean, just Christ's message there.
Yeah. I'll take care of take care of everything.
It.
Yeah.
Stop struggling. Stop trying to make me do it your way. And that's me. I'm an only child. So I'm like, I want my way, and he's like, just trust me. I'll take care of it. And, that deep confusion, that deep darkness and feeling of loss and just total chaos kind of going on in your head. He can quiet all of that. I was just listening to that story today of Christ napping in the boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And his disciples freaking out, like any of us, all of us do. We're freaking out. We're like, where are you? Why are you sleeping? We're going to die.
And then he
like,
shows up and you say, why didn't I remember that? And then the next time you do the exact same thing, he shows up, you say, oh, why wouldn't I just trust you from now on? And then
why don't I learn my lessons? Why is my skull so thick?
I often think, because I've read this story like 100 times to my kids, the Sneetches. Have you read the Sneetches, Dr. Seuss? What runs through my head, I don't know, it's probably not good. It's probably a nice negative thought pattern. Anyway, if I do something that I know, like, oh man, God was right. And so I'll hear that phrase in my head, you can't teach a Sneetch. And it's hard to admit that, but it's true. Like humanity, I just see us, we fall and fall and fall. And I just hear that you can't teach a Sneetch. Like, have we learned our lessons yet? Have we, will we ever learn? Anyway, that was clearly a tangent, but.
No, it's very relevant. And I think just, trying as much as we can to make space for him to work.
Yeah.
That's all we have to do.
No, that's excellent advice. Adoration, surrender novena. And I got to say, the surrender novena, with any novena, if you actually mean the words, I mean, that takes it off. This is obvious, but I just have to remind myself of this. You can just say, oh, we're going to do a novena, and you just start reading it and you don't internalize it, right?
Right.
But if you pause and internalize those words, that's when the emotions start coming out and you just realize, oh, whoa, this is a big prayer,
Yeah, it is really huge. And you're right. It's so easy to just kind of like, okay, day 2,
day 3. Exactly. Well, cool. Is there anything else you want to leave the viewers with?
Just a reminder that God loves you. That is kind of the primary message that undergirds Providential Co. And remembering that God loves you is huge. It's just something to repeat to yourself every day, and it'll kind of be a compass. And I hope that all your viewers are blessed.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tricia. God bless your work and your family. And I will include, obviously, the link to your shop and to some of these items that are so well done. So thanks again.
Thank you, Eddie.
My pleasure. Everyone, please share the video and comment and subscribe. Until next time, take care and God bless. Bye.